this is the Jeopardy project we have culminated over the weeks. As you can see, there's multiple categories with such fascinating topics like robots, famous first words, whatever going dark means, and multiple money values as well, showcasing the various amount of dinero. Let's go ahead by getting questions right. That's all I have. Is that one for introduction? I don't know how to introduce.
That was good. I mean, there's some functionality you need to also add, right? Like by clicking on a question, right?
You can see there's a current score that will be mentioned later. It will how do you call it? It will shift depending on if you get a question right or get a question wrong. And you can see what did it next. If you were to click on a tile, let's say let's click. I was gonna say let's click robots 100. Okay. A pop-up appears called the question pop-up. It tells you the category and money value at the top, the question that you have to answer. As you can see, oh, this is not how I did it. There's a start timer function that doesn't work. Show answer function which works, that tells you the answer, and then just a simple close to just escape. As you can see, the answer pop-up will appear if you were to click on show answer, and the answer would be who is Optimus Prime. Now, depending on if you either click correct or wrong, it would either add 100 or subtract 100 from your current score. Let's say we click wrong. Does it work? Okay, there we go. Took a while, not optimized. Current score negative 100. As you can see, we're failing. This is not good. We want to catch up. Let's do painfully obvious for 500. Okay. As you can see, there the same process when we did with robots 100. This would be an example of a function in which it repeats essentially the same process over and over again, just with different parameters, which would be the category index, which is the category name, like painfully obvious, going dark, and the money value, which sort of differentiates between the categories, which allows us to essentially write more code with less by using the same code format, just with different variables in between. If we're to click on show answer, it would do the same thing. It will get the answer to this question with a Sonic, and then let's say I got it right? Let's rig it. And then it will update the score the same way again.
Okay, I'll do render categories. Just give me one more. Hello, I'm Nahid. And I did the render category with my group. So here's the code that we have.
Nahid, you muted.
Yeah, you're on mute.
So what render categories do is render category is a function that has a for loop, which give me 1 second.
No problem.
Okay, so what does render categories do? Render category is a function that has a for loop which loops over each categories in the array. In result, it updates the HTML by adding the categories from the array to the top of the page. then what data structure is the most important to render categories? The array is the most important data structure to render categories because where the categories are because it's where the categories are being stored. What are methods? Method is a function that lives in other data types. For example, array, object, function, and string. So if you look at the render categories, there is a method dot length, and there's another one dot append. Um, what methods did you use to render categories? Uh, the J the jQuery append method is seen to render categories. We access it using the dot notation, and it lives upon the jQuery object. How are methods different from functions? A function is a set of instructions where it's associated to an object. For example, if you look at the code, you can see categories dot length. You have a dot notation there. That's how you access a method. Um, Also, um, function is a set of instruction that performs a task given. For example, if you look, there's actually no functions that we used here. I mean, the whole render category is a function.
Right.
Yeah. Um, what part of the file was most challenging? Looping the array of categories to its own div was challenging because we had to like do string concat, and I mean we had to add strings, and then we have to learn how to loop each of them without like breaking the codes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well done. On to render questions.
For render questions, its purpose is to show the values of the questions in different boxes. We use a for loop. We use nested for loops to iterate through the rows and columns of every question. The reason we need nested loops is because for every category, such as robots or going dark, each of them have 5 different questions, and we have to render each of them. The outer loop runs through the, hold on a moment.
Looks like this one's a little different than the one we were looking at here. Because I think in the one we were in, the outer loop went through the categories first, and then the question values.
Oh, okay, so the outer loop goes through the values of every question first, and then nested inside it are the categories in which they belong to. We append a div class. We append a div statement plus the value of that specific box to the question's ID. in the HTML.
Nice.
And we close it off with closing div statements.
All right. Anything else you hear?
I think that's it.
All right.
Nice.
Great.
Good job.
I guess it's my turn up.
Perfect. Go ahead.
No problem. So what scoring.js does is it, sorry, give me 1 second. So
No
sorry.
worries.
Okay. Okay. So the function we had to work on here was scoring.js. And what scoring.js does is that it gives us the, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's
Oh, it's
just
okay.
the way it's worded, the way I want to say it is conflicting with each other.
That's okay.
Take your time.
Okay. So scoring.js gives the user the current score by adding or subtracting points based on whether the question is wrong or right. So the 3 different functions that we had to use in this JS file was rendering scoring buttons, add to score, and subtract from score. So going into the first big higher order function is rendering scoring buttons. And what this higher order function does is it attaches click handlers that allow the user to signal whether the answer is correct or incorrect. You then accordingly change the score. And this function calls upon the other 2 functions, which is add to score and subtract from score. Sorry. Add to score is a helper function that allows us to that is called in render score functions, so that when the correct answer is said or chosen, it would add the question points to the original score or current score. And then subtract from score is another helper function that instead of adding the score, it would subtract it from your current score. And then finally, one of the hardest parts for this certain JS file was figuring out how to call a function in a click handler correctly, because the syntax seems to throw people off. And figuring out the scoop for my variables was tricky for successfully changing the current score. And finally, it was also difficult to figure out the HTML aspects of the code to correctly write the JavaScript. And that was scoring.js.
Nice. Good job.
Is it my turn next?
I believe it is. Click handle is
Yeah,
next.
go for it.
Let's go. What does click handlers do again? As the name suggests, if you were to, let's say, click on an element, an HTML element, like the cells, for instance, an event will happen. Some functions in our click handlers, let's see, for example, attach click handlers, what that does is attach click handlers and question on click. There's also some helper functions called get question and hide question pop-ups to make the code easier and so you're able to utilize those functions again for other purposes. Some parameters that are listed are the category index and the money value. Okay. What each function does, and this is let's say over attached click handlers. What did it do again? They sort of they sort of process the what's it called, the parameters into like a part of the click handlers. As you can see, originally there's parameters called index and question element, which was later was the cause for the variables category index and money value to form. And those are the parameters that we're going to use for the rest of the click handlers. Question on click is sort of what brings all this code together. It sort of assigns when you click on a cell, for example, the question, it will take the parameters from the index and the value of the money. It will look for that in the questions.js file, and it will get that question, and it will make it pop up into so for instance, if we were to click, like, say, the cell robots 100, like I mentioned earlier, it would look for which question has robots category and which has the $100 money value. They will both combine it, and they will get that question and use it as, whenever you click that, it will look for it, and then it will use it into the pop-up. And I already mentioned, what's it called? Get question and hide question pop-ups, they're very short and easy to explain. Get questions just gets the question based on, like I was already explaining it, gets the question from the category index and whatnot. And hide question pop-ups literally just hides it. It's one line, but it helps, like, make the code much more concise. And then as you can see, the much more overbearing function there is question on click, which sort of takes all the helper functions and sort of like help put it all in one place. So you're able to, it does like all the process while also being, like I said, in one place. I think that's it.